Hey there. Good evening, everybody. Welcome here to the Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show. This is a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So I apologize for the minute or so delay there. I had the camera on recording something else before and forgot to shut it off, and it wouldn't let me access. But I'm getting smarter. I figured this out fairly quickly. Anyways, I want to welcome you here to Into the Proverse. This is the show that I do once a week. It's a live stream. It's the only live one I do. That might change in the future, but for now, it's the only one I'm doing, where I talk about something that's in the progressive influence or progressive universe that is relevant to progressive rock. And so today I decided I did one of these a couple weeks ago, which was I picked three bands that were basically third level kind of prog bands. So to me, there's the level one prog bands. We all know who they are. I don't really need to repeat them. And then you got your level twos, but like that might include like Eloy and Gentle Giant and Hawkwind and some of these bands that were pretty successful, but not exactly at the top level. And then you got the third level, which are the bands underneath that who had maybe a tiny bit of success, but not enough to be really noticed by the world in general. Now, of course, in the prog universe here, which is where we are, most people who watch this channel will be aware of a lot of these bands I'm talking about, some of them much more than I am. And so I've been discovering some of these bands for the past 4 years since I started this channel, which has been a real educational eye-opener for me. I thought I knew a lot about music and prog music in general, but I guess my musical knowledge is not as great as I thought, and definitely my prog, because when I came into this, when I started the channel, I thought there was the prog bands I knew, the big ones, and then maybe a few lesser ones. I thought maybe in total there might be 12 or 15 prog bands out there. Boy, was I way off on the mark there. I had no idea there was so many bands. So I decided that I would do another episode of this because there was some other prog bands that are in that third level that I kind of wanted to give a little bit of attention to. And so I picked out three of them, and we'll probably talk about some other ones as well. But for now, we're going to talk about these three. So the first one that I'm going to kind of talk about is this band, Drifting Sun. So I got this album. I'm trying to remember. It must be a couple of years now. I'm not sure. When did this album come out? Maybe it was last year. Might have been last year. So let me look here. And of course, you know how it is. These things never tell you a date anymore. They used to do this. You used to get at the bottom of every album, you would get release date, or at least a release year anyways. And then, or somewhere on the album cover or album fold or whatever you want to call it, you would get a date written in a corner somewhere under the copyright stuff or whatever. Now I can't even get this silly thing out of here. Doesn't want to come out. Anyways, I think this was actually from last year. Doesn't say anywhere on here, but I think it was from last year. Anyways, good album. I ordered it from their site, actually. I haven't done that very often. Like once in a while, I'll do it. It's just because the expense, not the exchange rate, is terrible here in Canada. We are always the lowest. No matter where we buy stuff from, we're half, if we're even that. That's because this is a welfare state. But basically, this album it came from England. And of course, there's service charges to get it. So it was costing $11, but by the time I got my hands on it, it was $33. So I don't do too much of that because it's quite expensive. Anyways, this is a good album. I wouldn't say it's a great album. If I was going to give it a rank, it would be like a mid 2. So not quite good enough to look back at a classic rock album. Not that it's old enough to do that anyways, but Good enough that I like it. I do pull it out on occasion. They have about 7 or 8 other albums. Probably will purchase them when the opportunity comes or where I see an opportunity to get them, but I'm not paying no $33 for an album like that's a 2. You know, for me, 2s are like $5 to $10 albums at best. You know, and then you got ones that maybe I'll pay 10 to 15, and then the masterpiece or eventual masterpiece or an album I think is going to be a masterpiece, maybe I'll pay beyond that. And often I pay beyond that anyways. But anyways, this is a good group. Give you a little background on them. You basically have these 5 guys on this particular album. Case the guy with my finger on him, John Jowett, was the reason I bought it, because he played bass with IQ, which is one of my up-and-coming favorite bands. Of course, Fudge Smith, everybody knows him. And you got 3 other guys at the top, pretty strong. This is a pretty strong album, very symphonic, maybe a little too symphonic. It does have a little bit of that IQ sound to it, but on the whole, I think it stands to be a little bit different, but it's a nice album. It's a nice album. It did well with me on my ranking list last year. So they've got some other ones I'd like to get, like I said, but I'll have to be a little bit more frugal about my choices of where I'm getting them and how I'm getting them. So we're going to move on from them a little bit now to talk about another band that is very new to me. This is a band that I've only been listening to basically for the last year. This was my first album by them, Tuskmorke. This is called Bittera. So basically, these are about animal stories. They're a Finnish band. The music on this particular album is in Finnish. I don't know if it's like that on all their albums. These are actually, did I say Finnish? I meant to say Norwegian. I think they're actually Norwegian. I'm not seeing that anywhere here, though. Yeah, they might be Finnish. Geez, I thought I knew that, but I'm doubting myself here now about it. Yeah, I'm just looking a little bit here to see if they give you any kind of stuff here. Yeah, actually, they're Norwegian. I thought they were Norwegian. I don't know why I said Finnish. I don't know why I had Finnish in my head even. To me, when I think of Finland, I think of more of the metal bands. And when I think of Norway, I think more of the prog bands. Now, maybe that's not always the case, but that's generally how I feel about it. This is a good album. The music on here is very good, well put together. Of course, you see the animals. I think the big thing for me, the reason that I kind of went with this band and kind of actually, I'm going to show you as it'll make more sense. Once I show it to you. Sorry, this is kind of an improv here. So anyways, the thing that drew me to this band was, other than listening to people talk about them, seeing them, some of them participating with the Chronicles of Father Robin. I think there's at least one guy on the Chronicles of Father Robin that came from this band. The music is quite good, but the thing that drew me to them was because of this. The Adventures of Patty the Bear, or this is by, you can see his name there, Thornton W. Burgess. He was an animal naturalist who wrote kids' stories about animals from the woods. And I was a big fan of that when I was a kid. And this kind of reminded me of that. And that's what drew me in on this particular album. So I've listened to this in its entirety a few times. I do quite like it. I believe it's all in Finnish, so it's difficult to understand. But I still like it a lot. The current one I haven't listened to it yet. I got it, I think the month before. I think it was in May I got this. I mean, in April. Another album by them. Excellent. Again, the same kind of thing. Animals. lots of animals here. This, I think, is probably a better, well, they're both really good albums. Haven't listened to this yet. I'm looking forward to it. I'm probably going to play it this week at some point. Really quite good, this band. And I've ordered another one, so it's coming in a laser CD. So we'll be doing we do the new stuff purchase for the month of June. We'll have a third one. So this band's kind of captivated me a little bit. Lots of stuff on here. The other thing about this band, like so many of the Norwegian bands, is they tend to be very much into the early 70s style of prog rock. Even their instrumentation sounds like that. In the case of Wobbler, they only use stuff, musical instruments made prior to 1975 so that they can have a huge impact in that sound. This band, maybe not as much of that, but still very much into that kind of thing. So for those of you who didn't catch the name of the band, they're called Tuskmorke. And you can see very intricate. Like, I really like their album covers. They're very intricate. This one's a little bit more sorry, I got upside down here. I just realized it. Yeah, this one's a little bit more kind of a witchy kind of feel to it. So this album is called Lekker for Both, Ritual for Vosk. Lekker for Barn, sorry, not for both. Lekker for Barn, Ritual for Voskin. So yeah, both of them, I think, are probably in Norwegian. And yeah, just really good stuff. The musicianship is excellent on this album for sure. I haven't listened to the other one. Well, actually, it's not entirely true. I haven't listened to that CD. I have listened to it online. I've listened to it once. So the other band I want to talk a little bit about, probably we'll talk the most about this band. I'm the most familiar. I bought stuff from, I probably listened to them for a couple of years. I bought this one first. It's kind of a greatest hits from the Ozric Tentacles, Between the Bits. This is a collection, which I believe came from, it's a set number of years here. I'm just looking to see what it is. Yeah, from 1985 to 89. So for those of you who have never really listened to this band, they are an instrumental band, very progressive, not progressive, sorry, very psychedelic at times, a large psychedelic element, also very space rockish. I would say these are one of the most space rockish bands. So this was my first buy. I had listened to some other stuff online before I bought this one. This is really good. Lots of good stuff on here. So they've basically done a greatest hits or, selections from 4 or 5 other albums. They have a fairly large discography as well. And then recently I bought this one, Earthland, which was highly recommended as one of the first Ozric Tenticle albums to get. The guitar playing is fantastic. You've got basically 12 tracks on this album, recorded in Wales, England. Yeah, so it's got a nice setup here on the inside. Basically tells you who's playing what on each song, which I always like, because then you're not guessing, oh, is that this or is that? You know exactly what's going on, so you can actually, it's very good for identifying instrumentation. Like a lot of stuff, you think it might be a keyboard, but it could be a flute, and you're not sure. It could be like a mellotron instead of this or that, right? So the synthesizer parts I like, but I prefer to know what people are playing. And then there's little instruments. You're not quite sure what it is, but it'll tell you on each of the songs. And so an album like this will help me with a lot of other albums too, which is something I like quite a bit. This album is good. I don't know if it's great, but it's good. The guitar playing is fantastic. This one isn't as psychedelic as the one that I wanted to get, which was I can't even think of the name of it. There was another one that was the first one I listened to. I liked a lot. Very psychedelic, lots of spacey sounds to it, lots of synthesizers and keyboards. This one maybe not quite as much of that, but and this was released in 2020 or remastered in 2020. I think it was originally released in 1990. So they've been around for a fair bit of time now. I think 30 to 35 years. Maybe they started sometime in the early 80s, early to mid 80s. I think I want to say 84, 83, 84 time period. So if anybody's out there listening, want to make comments on that particular observation on my part, you can do that as well. I would be very interested to know exactly. I mean, I could go online and look it up, but and I probably will if nobody answers it, but it's sometimes I like to give a conversation a little bit. I do like the back cover of this album as well. A lot of their albums look like this, very kind of almost Lord of the Ring-ish, but cartoonish, if you want, and very psychedelic. So this band, if I was classifying them, I would classify them as psychedelic space rock. Those are the two elements I think they are dominated by. With Tuskmorke, I think this is a little bit more folkish sound. I don't know about this album, but because I only listened to it once, but I would say a folkish sound with also maybe progressive, definitely. A little bit of poppy sound here and there, but very complex. Even you might even want to, I wouldn't say it's jazz fusion, but they do meander quite a bit. So maybe you might want to give it that kind of consideration as well. Yeah, this is good. And it's kind of storytelling, which I like as well. And the other band, of course, is progressive, probably symphonic rock. So I chose something a little bit different. I didn't want to do all three of the same type. So yeah, really good stuff. All these. There's some of the other bands that I've started to listen to that kind of fall into the range of these bands. Of course, Solstice is one of them, but that they're a little bit older than that. They fall into that second wave of progressive rock that we did a show on last week. So I didn't put Drifting Sun in there because I think they're too new for that kind of designation, but they do fit into that sound. Other what I might call space rock bands like Eloy, Pink Floyd, and Hawkwind. Although I'd probably take some people will argue with you about Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd has so many sounds. So if you call them a progressive rock band, you're going to piss off people who don't think of them that way. Call them a psychedelic band, you'll piss off people who think of them as prog bands. If you call them a space rock band, they'll say, no, they're not that. They're always something other than what you're saying. But to me, they're the kind of founders of space rock. They were the first band to kind of really do that whole space rock thing. Hawkwind as well, and then Eloy came on board. Ozric Tentacles. Now, the thing about Ozric Tentacles, though, is they don't sing. There's no singing on any of their albums. It's just instrumentation. I kind of like them a lot. There's a lot of more obscure bands that I've still. So if I was kind of classifying my progressive rock bands, which is my mind normally likes to do this, is I would have your tier ones, which would feature like Yes and ELP and Genesis and Rush, and then your tier twos, which might represent like Gentle Giant, Eloy, Camel, Hawkwind, those type of bands. And then you get these more obscure bands like Drifting Sun, Tuskmorke, Wobbler even. These are all like what I would call level 3, and then you've got your kind of, I wouldn't call them level 4s. I would say they're more obscure bands that even people who do this stuff, talk about this stuff all the time, don't even know. So they're, a band like maybe Devil Doll, although I wouldn't call Devil Doll a prog band, but they do have prog elements to their music. I kind of think of them as a cross of a bunch of stuff, but they're a very obscure band that, unless you're really digging deep, you're not going to discover a band like that. But yeah, there's quite a bit of that kind of stuff out there too. Yeah, those are the bands that, that's the kind of stuff that interests me. So recently yesterday I did a album for What's New by an album that just came out by Eden Song, which is a band that I had not heard of before. So to me, they're kind of obscure, but they've had several albums and have been around for a while. Their music is very progressive in nature, absolutely very progressive, and just really great stuff. I would even go as far as to call them a bit of a progressive metal band. At times, they certainly fall into that, but they have a folky element to their music too. So they kind of do everything. They're an everything band, I guess you might want to call them, but very good. I like them a lot. Ellesmere's another band that I like a lot that been having difficulty even getting any of their albums, not alone listening to them. So yeah, so there's all kinds of different stuff out there. If you are one of those people who think like I used to, that there's only the top level bands and then a few underneath bands that you don't really care for, then you're missing a whole whack of great stuff that's out there. Some of the stuff's better, like bands like IQ, Solstice, Camel, Caravan. These are bands that if you only listen to the top level stuff, you're going to miss out. Like I did with King Crimson, and for many years I wouldn't listen to them because, they're just wannabes. That's how I dismissed it. It's just plain arrogance and ignorance of the facts, right? So now that I'm exploring it, I realize how many of these bands are actually great. Some of them actually are better than those tier 1 bands, in my opinion. And they just didn't get the commercial success. So if you equate greatness to commercial success, then there's probably only going to be about a dozen. There's probably only going to be about 40 or 50 bands that you would have anything to do with, because they didn't have any greatness, so they're no good. If that's the way you want to think, then you're going to miss out on a ton of stuff. Bands like Gentle Giant and Caravan are absolutely great bands that just didn't have the commercial success that the other bands did. I would argue that these bands, because they weren't as commercial, actually produced more memorable stuff than a lot of these bigger bands. Maybe not as much as the very top, like ELP and Genesis and Yes, but definitely I think some of these are as good as Jethro Tull. Maybe some of the other bands, maybe they don't belong up there with them because they haven't had that commercial success. And the reason that I think some of these prog bands were so commercially successful is because they were more closer to the line. So they weren't just appealing to prog people. They were appealing to the mainstream. And that might be a good thing for the people selling albums and for the bands themselves making money and for the people out there who are listening. But for prog people, we tend to want something that's going to last and it has some greatness to it. And some of these lesser bands who maybe didn't sell as well we like more because they haven't really sold out to the commercial element. And those bands tend to be further away from the center. You get bands like Pink Floyd's a little bit further away from the center than Genesis or Yes or even Rush. And then you got bands like Gentle Giant might be even a little further away. And then you got bands like King Crimson are pretty damn far away from the center. And there's even more bands that are even more extreme. And I got this herbal tea that my friend bought me a whole box of it. I'm not sure if I like it, but I'm giving it a try. Don't need any sugar in there, that's for sure. Anyways, that's my take on tonight's 3 bands. I hope you've enjoyed this. I was going to stay a little bit longer, but I was out all day, far away, driving my bike, and I am pretty next to exhausted. There was some other stuff I wanted to do, and I'm probably too tired to do it, but I wanted to do this to talk about these. Hopefully, I'm going to get some more of this stuff. Maybe we'll do another episode of this in the future. Not sure what I'm going to do for next week's episode. I have a couple of things in mind. I do like to do those collection episodes. So I did one for Yes. I think I did one for Camel. Did I do one for the Camel? Yeah, I think I did one for Camel and Eloy. I'm thinking about doing one for Pink Floyd too, because Pink Floyd is one of the most difficult bands to pen down. They also have a wide discrepancy on their albums. So you've got some of them, they're absolutely the pinnacle of music. And you got a few in the middle. And then you have some that are really not good at all, in my opinion. So for a band that's legendary in its status, they do have a wide range of stuff. So I'm thinking about doing them for my next episode. Pretty sure I haven't done them yet, but we will be talking about them. I have all of their albums and even some extras. So we'll probably talk about that. Anyways, I hope to see you all for that episode next week. So please take care and have yourself a good evening and good night here from Into the Progverse. Take care and goodbye.